Straight
Stop explaining yourself. This episode today is about why, as you step into your fuller levels of presence and dominance, you don't need to lay out and or justify your reasons for your actions or decisions as much or as often as you've been doing up to this point, or as much or as often as you have done in the past. On top of the fact that less explanation means you're also, just on a practical level, saving yourself time and being more efficient with this very valuable resource. Also being more efficient with your valuable resource of communication. And generally speaking, as a general rule, the less you explain things, the more powerful you are perceived as being. But let's get into that when we get into our points. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is stop explaining yourself. Point number one. Explaining yourself to other people is a sign, unconsciously, of submission and subordination. When you're explaining yourself to someone else, then you are basically submitting to them that you need to explain yourself to them, and you are subordinating yourself to that person. In other words, you're letting them know that you see them as superior to you in some way. Therefore, you need to explain yourself to them. That's what explaining yourself does. That's what you're unconsciously telling another person when you explain yourself to them. You may have to explain yourself to your boss because your boss has authority. You may explain yourself when you're a child, explain yourself to your parents or to anyone who has authority over you when they indeed do have authority because they have the position of authority. But when you start explaining yourself to someone who doesn't have authority, you are giving up your own authority by explaining whatever you're saying or whatever you're doing to those people. You may notice that politicians, for example, let's use a president, any president you want to name. Presidents very seldom explain themselves even to the constituents who have voted for them, i.e. the American people. The president makes a decision that they make. If you ask the president about a decision that they made, let's say it's a controversial decision, the president is trained into how to basically filibuster their response, to give a response in such a way that it validates and basically affirms why they made the decision that they made, but they're not really explaining themselves to you because they don't have to explain themselves to you. Why? Because the president is the highest job in the country. They don't have to explain themselves to anybody because they have no bosses. And some may say, well, isn't the boss of the president the actual American people who voted for the president? Technically, yes. While at the same time, here's what's also true, is that when the people vote for the president, you are choosing that person as the person in charge. And therefore, from that point forward, they're going to do what you voted for them to do, or they're going to do whatever they want to do because we voted for them, and we got to deal with that because you voted for them. That's the person that got chosen by the democratic process of voting. Even if you didn't vote for them, you are part of the process of voting. Even if you didn't vote at all, you are part of the process of voting, and that's who got chosen. So this is the leader that we have, whether you chose them or not. Whether you voted for them or not, you indirectly did vote for them because you participated, and this is the person that got chosen. So everybody voted for the president that we have, even if you've never been inside a voting booth, if you understand what I'm saying. And I'm saying all that not to talk about voting, but to say that when a person's in a position of power and they are really the person in charge, they don't do any explaining. Everybody explains to them. They don't explain to anyone. And if you want to step up your power and you want to put yourself in a higher position of authority in life, here's one simple way you can start doing it without a change in your career status or job title or business card, is stop explaining yourself to people and let other people explain themselves to you. You automatically will be in a higher status position just because of that habit, even if nothing tangibly in your life has changed. When someone else has the authority, they can, at times at least, demand explanations from others, maybe even you, simply because of the position that they hold, and you're obligated to give it. However, when you're talking to people who don't have authority over you, you don't need to explain yourself, and you should stop explaining yourself if you've been doing it up to this point. When you find yourself doing this, explaining yourself, you're putting yourself into a subordinate position, and you may not even know that you're doing it. You may not even notice it, but unconsciously, this is what's happening, because only subordinates have to explain to their superiors. Superiors do not explain themselves to subordinates. If you're a parent and you have a 5-year-old child at home, you don't need to explain yourself to your 5-year-old. Now, there are some parents out there who operate by some mindsets around parenting that you want to talk to the kid as if they are on that level and you need to explain yourself to them. I don't buy into this line of reasoning, but there are many parents who do. I personally don't, but I understand that some do. For me, if I'm talking to a child, my child is living under my roof, I don't need to explain myself to my child. Now, if I want to explain myself, or I want to explain a concept, it's not even usually explaining myself. I don't explain myself to anybody. But if I want to explain a concept to a person, I will do that. I kind of do that every single day here on this show. I'm explaining the concept, but I don't have to explain myself to anyone, let alone to a child. Why? Because the child is subordinate to me. So I'm not explaining myself to anyone who is subordinate to me, and no one has authority. I'm not subordinate to anyone, so I'm not explaining myself to anybody based on what I've already told you here in this first point. When you when you find yourself explaining yourself to someone, you are subordinate to that person. So next time you explain yourself to somebody, ask yourself, am I subordinate to this person? If I am, then that makes sense. If you're not, then stop doing it. Simple as that. So now that you're aware, I suggest that you cease and desist this activity of explaining yourself to people who are not your superiors. And when I say superior, I don't mean they're a better person than you. What I mean is like they literally are higher than you on the organizational chart. If they're not, stop explaining yourself. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is stop explaining yourself. Number 2, as a general rule, the more explaining you need to do to a person, the less chance they will get it, no matter what you say. What does this mean? There are people who listen to this show, for example, or you read my emails, or you're in my world in some way, and you get me, you get my approach, and you get what I'm about. And for those people who I just described, there are some things that I explain here on this show, and I explain them in detail that I don't really need to explain. If I really didn't want to explain it, I wouldn't have to explain it and you would still get it. If I didn't take nearly as much time as I did to spell out some things. Because as soon as I said it, you understood it. You got exactly what I meant the first time you heard it. I know sometimes that I would be walking around Miami, and when there was a lot of construction going on, I would see some construction project. I would take a picture of the project that was clearly under construction, and I would use the hashtag 1 day at a time. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine named Bonnie, and Bonnie said the first time I saw that, I knew exactly what it meant, and I got exactly what you were doing when you posted it, because she understood that 1 day at a time was about discipline and showing up every day and doing the work. And when you're doing a construction project, it's every day you do the work, and eventually you got a 50-story building. That's what 1 day at a time meant. I never explained that. I would just take the picture and post the hashtag. And the people who get it, they got it the first time they saw it. No explanation necessary. People I needed to explain it to, they would eventually get it, but the target people are the people who got it without me explaining it at all. Now, again, there are some things that I explain to some of you who listen to this that for you, I don't need to explain it because you understood it when you first heard it. And as a general rule, the more explaining I need to do for someone to understand me, the less likely they are ever going to be psychographically aligned with where I'm at. Now, there are exceptions to this. There are people who, sometimes when I'm doing my live streams in the morning where I have an active live audience of a few hundred and sometimes a few thousand people, there are people who will leave comments at the end of my live stream and they'll say something like, I appreciate you and your style of communication, Dre, because I actually learned something today. You opened my eyes to a new thing. You changed my mind on a certain subject. Every day I'll get a couple of people who will say something like that, but you got to understand, a couple of people, I mean, I count them on my hand, how many people say something like that when over the course of the live stream, we're talking anywhere from 1,000 to 20,000 people actually checking in on the stream. Maybe 4 or 5 or 3 people say, hey, you opened my eyes to something, you taught me something new, you showed me something different. Now, that doesn't mean that's the entirety of the people who had that thought, because not everybody leaves comments. But of the people who leave comments, again, I count on my hand the number of people who say, okay, I didn't get it at first, but I get it now. I would say of all the people who are taking in my material, maybe I give it maybe 3 or 4% of people actually feel that way, whether they say it or not. I would say 3 out of every 100. That's what I would say, just estimating. And again, it doesn't mean it's impossible for someone to come around. If they start off on one side, they can't come to the other side. Again, I just told you that there are people who literally tell me that that's exactly what I was able to do for them in the course of a talk. But the right people understand you and they're on the same page with you, often from a very early exposure. As soon as they see you and come across you, they're like, okay, this person, this is my person. All right, Dre gets me and I get Dre. Now, while it is true to some people, you can grow on them and they may not have connected with you at first, but the people who are most connected and most aligned with you are those who don't need a ton of explanation to get where you're coming from and why you're coming from there. In sports, for example, you'll hear athletes talk about this. Athletes who played on the same team for a long time, that they can communicate with their teammate by simply making eye contact and giving each other a head nod. And they both know exactly what the other one is thinking, even though no words are actually spoken. As I said, it is true that some people can have things explained to them in detail and then they finally get it. So some people do need to have the detail explained to them so they can finally understand. And again, the ones that we usually connect with the most, this applies to me the same way that it applies to you, are those who you don't have to give a ton of explanation to. Why? Because they just got it. They connect it from the very beginning. So there's no need to explain yourself because they're already thinking what you're saying. Any of you knows anything about marketing? You know that one of the key things you want to do as a marketer is you want to consider your target market and ask yourself what conversation is already going on in their minds right now. What are they already thinking about? What are they already concerned with? What is keeping them up at night? What is their biggest problem right now? And then your job is to put that problem into your own words, using the words that you think they're using or that you know they're using, put it into your words, and then you communicate back to them exactly what they're thinking, things they haven't said, but that they're thinking. And when they come across your material, if you've done a good job of this and you have indeed captured what's going on in their minds, they will be immediately connected to you. They'll see an immediate connection, an immediate psychographic alignment with you. Why? Because it is clear that you know exactly what they're thinking and they never told you, but you already know. And this is when you get prospects and customers saying to you, I feel like you're talking straight to me. I feel like you are reading my mind. I feel like you know exactly what I'm going through. I feel like you know exactly where I'm at and exactly where I need to go next and exactly what my problem is. How are you able to dial in like that? It's simply because you have put out a message that resonates psychographically with the right people. That's how it happens. This is the key to marketing, by the way. The key to marketing is catching people where they're at and showing them that you're in the same place and or that you know what it feels like to be in the same place. Because you may not be there anymore, but you know what it felt like when you were there. I remember, for example, in high school, not in high school, when I was making YouTube videos, I had a lot of players who were in high school who were following my material. And I would either hear from the players, and often, believe it or not, I would hear from parents. I got a lot of emails from parents over the years who would tell me that they had a child who was in high school who watched my content all the time, so much that the parent was aware of who I was. And the parent would email me and say, hey, my son tried out for the high school team and he got cut and he was very disappointed and that's all he does is play basketball and I feel so sorry for him and I don't know what to do to help him. Is there anything you could say to him or do for him or something? And I made so many videos over the years about or on the subject of if you got cut from the high school team and what to do about it and how to feel about it and how to reframe it in your mind and how to use the disappointment from that situation to channel into positive energy to make yourself better for the future. And the reason I would get so many of these messages is because I famously, at least in my audience, famously didn't make my high school basketball team my freshman year, my sophomore year, or my junior year. I finally made it my senior year and I barely played the 1 year that I was on the basketball team. So because this was part of my story, a lot of people who didn't make a high school team would come to me and ask me how can they mentally get themselves back in the zone that they need to be despite this setback that they had just faced. And I ended up making a lot of content around that concept, which actually led into a lot of the mindset material that I made, because discipline, confidence, mental toughness, taking initiative, all of those are required when you face a setback in life. And the reason why those messages about getting cut from the high school team or just facing setbacks in general, the reason why those messages resonated so much with my audience, and I created lifelong audience members and lifelong fans and lifelong customers based on those messages, was because the things that I would say in those videos talking about those tough circumstances were the exact things that I knew were going through the minds of those players. Now, how did I know what was going on through the minds? How did I know what was going on in the minds of those players? I knew because I had been them. I had been literally where they were. I had gotten cut from the high school team. I knew what it felt like to have all the other boys in school saying, you tried out for the team and you didn't make it. Or having people ask you, hey, you tried out for the team. Did you make it? Or you knowing that you're not on the team, even though basketball is the main thing that you give the most of your resources to, and you couldn't even make the team on your school. So you feel like shit. What do you do in that situation? I knew exactly what it felt like, which is why I was able to talk directly to that audience. And when I entered the conversation that was already going on in their heads, they said, this guy gets me. Within 2 minutes, they knew that I got them. I knew that I got them, and they knew that I got them. Why? Because I was talking just the way that they were thinking. Everybody understand this? This is all part of the marketing game, by the way. All right. And the better you get at this, the better you will dial yourself right into the minds of the people who you're serving. Get better at this and your business will do a lot better, simply because the right people are going to be knocking on your door because you're saying the exact things that are going on in their head and they're wondering how the hell you know. And they just want to move closer to you because of it. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is Stop explaining yourself. Number 3, get better at message clarity. When your message is clear, you don't have to give nearly as much explanation. Often, not always, but often when you're giving an explanation of a message, it's simply because your message wasn't clear enough. You gotta explain it so people can get it. Look at a company like Nike. They have a slogan. What's Nike's slogan? Everybody knows it. It's called Just Do It. Nike does not explain what Just Do It means. You just understand it as soon as you hear it. As soon as you see it, you're like, oh, just do it. Yeah, I get it. Got it. As soon as you hear it, you understand. When I say work on your game, although I've done thousands of hours of material explaining work on your game, when I just say work on your game, I don't need to do thousands of hours of material explaining it. Let me prove to you how I know. When I say that work on your, I'll prove to you in a second how I know. When I say that work on your game is about turning discipline into dominance, you understand just on the idea itself, even if I don't explain it. When I say we turn discipline into dominance through a process and a system that we've codified from my sporting experience, getting to the top 2%, to helping business people get to the top 2%. See, that's an explanation. But if I just say work on your game, if I just say that, you kind of get it. If I say we turn discipline into dominance, you might have to think about it for a second, but eventually within 30 seconds, you got an idea what that probably looks like or feels like or what it means. Or worst case, you are intrigued to find out what it means. Right? That's the whole point of it. When I walk through a grocery store or I'm out at the park with my son and I have a hat on that says work on your game, somebody looks at my hat and they see it, work on your game. And I got some hats that say work on your fucking game. When people see the hat, they tell me they like the hat. I was in Trader Joe's last week. Some chubby white guy saw the hat. I thought he was looking at me. He was really looking at the hat. And I came over to his line. He said, I was looking at it, trying to figure out what your hat said, and I like it. And that's all he said. And I said, oh, thank you. He didn't ask me who I was. He didn't ask me what I do for a living. All he said was, I like your hat. And then he rung up my stuff. I paid for it and I left. I didn't have to explain it to him. He didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't need an explanation. When I'm walking around and people see work on your game on my hat, or I have a tattoo on my right bicep that says work on your game, when people see it, they get it. Nobody asked me where it came from, what it's about. Very rarely does anybody ask me. Of every 100 times somebody notices the work on your game and they say they like it, maybe 2 out of 100 will ask me a follow-up question. Who are you? Do you play a sport, et cetera, et cetera? Just say, I like that. And I say, thank you. And I just keep moving. As do they. I don't have to explain it. Now, why do I not have to explain it? Because the message is so clear that you don't need it explained to you. A clear message doesn't have to be explained, folks. It is understood just on its own merits. When former President Barack Obama said, yes, we can, did he explain what that meant? Not really. He didn't have to explain it. Because all his supporters understood what it meant. They understood it and they were inspired by it. And it's one of the reasons why he won the election. Now, you look at someone like his opponents, John McCain and Mitt Romney, what were their campaign slogans? I don't remember. There's a reason why you don't remember, because they didn't win. And there's a reason why they didn't win, because you don't remember. All right, what was Donald Trump's campaign slogan? Everybody listening to this knows the answer. Whether you like him or not, whether you voted for him or not, everybody knows the answer to what his campaign slogan was. His campaign slogan was extremely clear. That's one of the reasons why he won. He said, make America great again. His supporters heard that and they said, yes, that's exactly what we want. Now, that phrase is open to interpretation the same way that Barack Obama's yes, we can is open to interpretation. That's a beautiful thing about a clear phrasing, especially in politics. You want it open enough that people can interpret it whatever way they want. They can paint it with whatever seasoning they wish. As long as it's something that comes out with them being excited about it, that means they're going to vote for you. That's what you want when you're in politics. So strokes of genius by both current president and former presidents. And again, when Donald Trump came out with MAGA, Make America Great Again, his supporters were super excited. His detractors were equally outraged. As happy as his supporters were, his detractors were that mad, which means everybody had an opinion. The point is, neither side needed anything explained to them. All right, that's message clarity. Barack Obama, nobody had to be explained what yes, we can meant. The people who hated Obama understood it, and the people who loved him understood it. Same thing with Donald Trump and MAGA. Very clear messaging. What does this mean for all of you? When your messaging is clear, you don't have to explain the shit to people. If you have to explain your message to people, the message ain't clear enough. All that said, let's recap today's class. It says stop explaining yourself. Point number 1, explaining yourself to other people is a sign of submission and subordination. You only have to explain yourself to people who are your superiors and who are above you on the org chart, often literally on the org chart. They're not above you. You don't have to explain yourself to them. Stop doing this. Point number 2, As a general rule, the more explaining you need to do to a person, the less chance that they will get it, or the more murky your message is, because you have to keep explaining it to get them to understand what the hell you're talking about. When your message is clear, you don't have to explain anything. Which moves to the point number 3. Get better at message clarity. Nike says, just do it. Do you get it? You get it. Dre says, work on your game. Do you get it? Yes, you get it. I can explain it, but I don't have to explain it. Barack Obama said, yes, we can. Do you understand that? Yes, you did. You do, and you did. Donald Trump said, make America great again. Do you understand it? You do, and you did. Now, again, people can be cynical about those phrases and try to come up with something derogatory to say about it, but nobody can say they don't get what it means. And that's the reason why those messages work. All this said, folks, over here and work on your game. Work on your game world. Work on your game university. Work on your game academy, the circle group coaching program, and everything else we do here. Our goal is to turn discipline into dominance through a weaponized, process-driven system to get you into the top 2% of what you do. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and let's get to work on that. Work on your game. Dre all